Hi, this is Shamsi. I'm a finance professor and welcome to another video. So, last video I uploaded, we dabbled into project management and we were discussing about organizational strategy and project selection. And last time we stopped at project classification. For this particular video, we're going to be continuing to discuss the phase gate model, selecting the appropriate selection criteria, applying a selection model, and managing the project portfolio system. So, to recap, a project has three different classifications. So, there's three. Compliance, meaning these are the must-do or the emergency projects, meaning you can't really do away without doing this because not doing these sorts of project will mean penalties. Second is the operational projects. So these are the projects that you undertake in order to support the day-to-day operations of the company, such as probably streamlining the disbursement process of the accounting office, or if you're in the record section, the indexing process for all of the files. Strategic projects, however, are the specific projects that stack up and lead you to the actual goal of the organization. Because we have established from last meeting that a project is actually something that a company would do, especially if it is aligned with the corporate strategy. So if you want to achieve your goals, each little step that you do towards those goals should add up to that progress. So therefore, these little projects are the mini steps towards that big goal. So now let's proceed with the phase gate model. So the phase gate model is a series of gates that a project must actually pass through in order to be completed. Its purpose is to ensure that the organization is investing time and resources on worthwhile projects that contribute to its mission and strategy. So each gate is associated with a project phase and represents a decision point. And a gate could lead to three possible outcomes. Go, meaning proceed. Kill, meaning scrap the project and cancel. Or recycle, meaning revise and resubmit. So let's take a look at the diagram. So this is the fate gate process diagram. Sorry about that. So for each project is divided into each individual phases. And for each phase, it has to pass through a gate. And as per our diagram here, the gate represents a decision point. So let's say for phase 1, it has to pass through gate 1. Now, what does that mean? Is the idea a go? Is the idea something that you would scrap altogether? Or is the idea good but still needs some level of improvement? So if it's a go, you proceed to the second phase. If it's a kill, then this particular project or idea is scrapped and you must move on to another idea. If it's a recycle, then the idea is good. You just have to fine tune the details of that particular idea. So from the pitching of the initial idea, you move forward with the proposal. So based on the proposal that was submitted, the project team or the project manager and the management would be reviewing the proposal. So if they find the proposal reasonable, then it's a go. If the project proposal does not at all meet the overall strategic plan of the company or the overall strategy of the company, then it could potentially be canceled or canceled altogether. If the proposal is okay, but there are some areas in which there needs to be improvements, therefore, the proponent of the proposal would have to resubmit the proposal. Once it passes gate 3, the project team and the management would screen and select among the vetted proposals. So among those projects that were proposed, which ones are qualified to proceed? So if it's a go, then you proceed to phase number 4, which you will start showing your implementation plan. So when you share your implementation plan, of course, you will have to show the management the entire implementation process. How are you going to go about it? If the implementation plan is approved, you proceed to progress and the constant evaluation. If the process needs a little work, of course, you revise. And if it doesn't work at all, then the project is dead. Phase 5, progress and evaluation. So, of course, when a project is implemented, you need to constantly monitor. If it's something that's still worth pursuing, then it passes through gate 5 and continues to phase 6. If it doesn't really, and you detect that it doesn't at all work, then maybe at an early point in phase 5, you would have to turn off the lights on those projects entirely. And if there is a need to pivot as you implement, you will also have to do that before passing the last gate, which is project closure. So, once you get to implement the project and you're finally ready to close, once everything is wrapped up neatly in a bow, then the project is considered closed. If there are problems, then you have to backtrack and do some work. And of course, for the last bit, hindi naman na po aabot ng project closure if the idea is actually dead. All right? So that's the phase gate, process diagram. So when we select projects, there's actually 2 areas in which project managers need to look at: the financial aspect or the financial criteria and the non-financial criteria. And then once we determine the appropriate project, then we can actually use a blended model. So if you want to choose a project using multiple criterias, you have a model in which you can choose from. So let's take a look at these one by one. So the payback model. This particular model has been discussed in management accounting. So this is in strategic cost management. So the payback model actually measures the time the project will take to recover the project investment. And when you're using the payback model, of course, you would want shorter payback. So what does that mean? The faster you are able to recoup your investment in a project, the better. Now, why is payback model commonly used in assessing the viability of a project? Because it is simple and it's a model that everybody could understand. And this particular model actually emphasizes on cash flows. Because as with every business, you have to be concerned about the cash inflows and outflows related to that project. If you are spending more than what you're expecting to get, then that project may not be worthwhile. But if you're spending a minimal amount in exchange to an unquantifiable number of cash inflows, then you might want to really keep pursuing the project. Now, with every model, as there are advantages, there are also disadvantages. So the payback model, because it is a simple, easy to use model, there is a fundamental error in this particular model. Now, what is this error? The error rather is that the payback model does not consider the time value of money. So the payback model only focuses on the nominal amount of cash that is going to be spent and is expected to receive by the company. So it ignores the fact that the money you spend today may not be the same amount next year or the following year, or the fact that the money that you're going to be receiving or you're expecting to receive today is different from the actual amount that you receive when the project is completed, probably 3 years from now. And the payback method actually assumes that cash inflows will happen during the investment period, or you're assuming the cash inflows during the investment period, and it does not extend any further after that. And thirdly, the payback model does not consider profitability. So your only focus on the payback model is the time it takes for you to recoup the money that you spent on a particular project, and you ignore the profitability aspect of that project. So what is the formula for payback period? It's the estimated project cost over annual savings. So here is an example. So let's take two projects. So you have project A and project B. So project A required an investment of $700,000, which equated to annual savings of $225,000. So if you divide 700K, the amount you invested, by the amount you're actually expecting to receive, then a payback period is expected to be within 3.1 years. All right? And if we take a look at that, if we divide 225,000 by 700,000, the ROI or the rate of return on this particular investment is 32.1%. All right. So, Project B, on the other hand, requires an investment of 400,000. And with the 400,000 in investments, you get annual savings of 110K. So when you divide 400K by 110,000, you get a payback period of 3.6 years. If you actually divide 110,000 by 400,000, you get a rate of return of 27.5%. So, if your criteria is to accept a project that has a payback of less than 5 years and the desired rate of return exceeds 15%, obviously, projects A and B would be accepted because both projects actually gets to recoup the amount invested in these particular projects within 3 to 4 years. And the rate of return is well within 27.5 and 32.1%. But if you're asked which of these two projects would you prioritize, based on the payback model alone, obviously, the project to choose would be Project A. Now, why is that the case? Project A has a shorter payback period compared to Project B. So Project B has 3.6 years of payback period, whereas Project A has 3.1 years only. And the rate of return actually differs for the two projects. And Project A actually yields a higher rate of return. All right? So that is how you analyze the financial viability of a project using payback model. Now, what about the net present value model? The net present value model uses management's minimum desired rate of return or the discount rate to compute the present value of all net cash inflows. And based on this particular model, the management leans towards positive NPV. So, the sole criteria for this project is to ensure that the project you're selecting has higher NPVs, or if both yield negative NPVs, you choose the least negative among the options. So, using the net present value is more realistic compared to the use of the payback model because it considers the time value of money, cash flows, and profitability. Now, what is the formula of NPV in Microsoft Excel? NPV is equals initial investment plus the sum of net cash flows over the time period over the required rate of return. So let's see how this is done in Excel. So here, there are two projects. Projects A and Project B. Much like our example earlier. But it is actually shown in the sense that you are given 5 years of cash inflows. So for Project A, during the year when you started the project, which is year 0, you are asked to shell out 700,000 pesos or $700,000. In exchange for the shell out of 700,000 pesos, you get an annual savings of 225,000 for the next 5 years. But the management is actually requiring a rate of return of 15% at the very least. Now, how would you go about the process of calculating which one is the better project? So if you're doing this manually, these individual inflows would have to be discounted back to the net present value. So how do you do that? So that's 225,000 for year 1 divided by 1.15. And then for year 2, this is also 225,000 divided by 1.15 squared. For year 3, it's going to be 225,000 divided by 1.15 raised to 3, so on and so forth. So what happens here? You actually account for the current value of the money that's going to be earned for you during that period. So once you add it all up, you find that you shell out 700,000 and it gives you an inflow in exchange for 101,125,000. So you are cash flow positive by 425,000. And if you discount that amount to the value today, the particular NPV of that project is 54,235. Now, what does that mean? Your 425,000 savings in 5 years is valued to be $54,235 today. All right. So for Project A, we have a positive NPV. Now let's take a look at Project B. We have already established that the required rate of return for the specific project is 15% to be accepted. And Project B requires a shell out of 400,000, and in exchange for the next 5 years, this particular project brings the company an annual cash inflow of 110,000 for the next 5 years. So if you would take a look, you shell out 400,000 and it brings you 550,000, cash flow positive 150K. But if you discount 150,000 by 15% for 5 years, it turns out that the net present value is actually negative. So if you would analyze the projects offered to you or the projects being considered by the company, of course, you would have to go with project A because project A has a positive NPV. And then you reject project B because of the opposite. So that is how you take a look at the financial viability of a project. So as you may have noticed, cash or the financial aspect of a project is one of the primary considerations. Because sino ba naman ang may gusto na mag-implement ng project ng palugit? Of course, wala. So that is why it is important that we know how to apply these models. All right. So I hope that is clear. Next, if there is a financial criteria, for sure, there is also a non-financial criteria for the projects. And sometimes you have to do a project not because it is cash flow positive, but it is part of your overall strategy. So, simply put, sometimes you set aside the financial aspect because you're foreseeing that today's expense would help you expand your business in the future. So, when you do that, you would have to take a look at the strategic impact of your project. If it would be able to help you grow your business, then it could be a reason for you to pursue it, even if it doesn't yield much cash inflows than you would have liked, or if the project is running at a negative NPV. But because you believe that this project is particularly necessary to get you closer to that one particular goal, you engage and you give that project a chance. So some of the examples of strategic objectives that are being considered as a non-financial criteria for selecting projects is number one, to capture market share. So what does this mean? Gagastosan ko muna because it means that for every penny that I spend to capture new customers and expand my market, it will also boost my sales. All right. Second example is to ensure that competitors have a difficult time to enter the market. So if you're looking at it from a standpoint of Michael Porter's 5 forces, you are strengthening your barriers to entry. And in order for you to do that, you have to spend some money. All right. Third example, to develop an enabler product, which by its introduction will increase sales in more profitable products. So you introduce a product that will interest the customers. And then by hooking them to that particular product, you are also inviting them to purchase your other products. And by doing that, the loss from developing or introducing the enabler product will be made up for by the increase in sales of these products that have higher margins. All right. So next example, you want to develop core technology that will be used in next generation products. So what does that mean? You spend money and invest in technology now. It's quite expensive, but you see this as a gateway and there will be payoff for when you produce your next generation products. Mas streamlined na siya. Second to the last example, to reduce dependency on unreliable suppliers. So, for example, you are in a manufacturing firm and you are sourcing your raw materials from an external supplier. If your external vendor or your external supplier is unreliable and you see problems in the supply chain, the management may want to integrate the supply chain in the business process. Like for example, Universal Robina. So Universal Robina, as you know, is a company that is owned by the Gokongwei Group, and they are they are the number one snack company. So for Universal Robina, since they produce a lot of chips and they want to save on costs, they actually bought a packing plant that will produce and manufacture the foil packs that they use as packaging for their chips, their noodles, and whatnot. So this avoids problems in the supply chains or delay in the delivery of the products in the market because they now have control over the next steps in the production process. So, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng delay dyan because you have your own packing plant and you have your manufacturing plant. So, you lessen your dependency on outside suppliers and you streamline and speed up your time to market by integrating that. Last example, to prevent government intervention and regulation. So, as we know, government regulation is quite strict, and if you're not ahead of it, it will cost you a lot of money. So, even if it means spending a lot now and crying about it later, companies would rather do something about their government compliance now than expecting to get a letter saying they have been penalized or fined. So, gagastosan ko na lang yan ngayon in order for me to be compliant and whatnot. Rather than wait for them to send me a note saying I need to pay X amount of money, which is for sure larger in the future. So those are examples of non-financial criteria that are being used to or that are being considered to in the process of selecting a project. So we need to take a look at both financial and non-financial criteria. But by doing those, we forego some of the how do you say this? Some of the more valuable and insightful parts of the project. So it's not just about the financial and non-financial criteria. So you also need to evaluate and start asking questions aside from the fact that you're considering the financial aspects and how it's aligned with the strategy. You would have to review all of the potential projects and ask a series of questions, which allows for greater flexibility in the project selection because it does not limit you from income generating projects or from doing projects that do not yield financial benefits. So we have two models that we can use. So the checklist model, as the name suggests, you prepare a checklist and you answer a list of questions to review potential projects and determine whether they should be accepted or rejected. Using the checklist model allow greater flexibility in selecting among many different types of projects and is easily used across different divisions and locations because there is already a template. May template ka na nung checklist. Ano ba yung mga i-consider natin dapat? And if it ticks all the boxes, then that project should be accepted. If you fail to answer the relative importance or value of a potential project using the checklist, so therefore, medyo negative tayo dito. While the checklist model is one of those things that are easy to use and very intuitive, it fails to answer the importance and the value of a potential project to the organization because it only answers or it only looks at the qualitative side of the project and it does not allow us to compare two different projects, apples to apples. Kasi subjective ka dito eh. And you're focusing on the quality of the project. Wala kang basis for numbers. So, it's still good to actually check for both the criteria and other or the financial criteria and other aspects when you select a project. Another model that's being used to select a project is a multi-weighted selection criteria. So, may scoring sheet tayo dito. And you use weighted selection criteria to evaluate project proposal. It includes quantitative and or qualitative criteria. And you allow for comparison with other potential projects. This is why a multi-weighted scoring model is better to use than just your average checklist model. So here is a sample of questions that are used in practice and you can use in building a project checklist. So here you have the topic and then the sample question. So some of the questions that you can ask is, what specific organization strategy does this project align with? What is the business problem that is being solved by the project? Who is the sponsor? and what are the drawbacks of not doing this project, how risky is a said project, and what is the value of this project to the organization. When will the project show us results? What are the objectives of the project? Is the project the right fit culturally for the organization? And will there be internal resources that would be needed to implement this project? How long will it take to finish? What is the estimated cost of the project? And how will this project interact with other projects that are going on? So these are just some of the questions that you will need to answer when you use the checklist model. Of course, this list can actually be expanded. All right. So how about if we use a multi-weighted scoring model? So here is a sample spreadsheet with all the criteria, and each criteria would have a weight. And for each of the projects, you would need to individually score and rank them accordingly. So for example, you have established the following criteria. So first, this project has to stay within the core competencies of the business. It should be, it should have a strategic fit with the company. It has to be urgent, and it has to generate 25% of the sales from new products. And one of the goals is that this project should be able to reduce defects to less than 1%, improve customer loyalty, bring us an ROI of 18% and above, and then you have the weighted total. So for each of the criteria, you are supposed to assign weights. In this example, the rating scale is 1 to 4. And for this particular score sheet, as you can see, some of the criteria that has the largest weight is that it should be a fit strategically with the company, and then it brings a high ROI of at least 18% and above. So for each of these projects that the company has lined up, they need to rank each of these projects. So ang scoring nito is 1 to 10. 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. So let's say project 1, mababa yung relationship niya with the core competencies of the company. However, it is a strategic fit because the management or the project team gave it an 8. It's not as urgent as the other projects, but it brings more than 25%. So they're actually ranking this according to the data. It does not reduce the defects of the company or on the stuff that they have manufactured so far. And relatively, it does well in retaining customer loyalty or improving customer loyalty and gives a decent ROI. And so on and so forth. So for each project, they have to rate each project 1 to 10 based on these criteria above. And if the project, if a particular project rather has the highest weighted score, then this particular project should be given priority. So according to this table, which project is the priority? So the first project in the pipeline, according to this table, should be project 5. And then the next project is project N. and then project 1, and then project 3, and project 6. Obviously, project 2 and project 4 are both out. All right, so that's how you use multi-weighted scoring models when you try to screen potential projects for implementation. So, which brings us to the realization that not all projects can be implemented. So, if you have multiple projects in the pipeline, you still need to screen them according to priority. And the multi-weighted scoring model allows us to see in a better light how the project would bring value to the organization in terms of its current goals. So, syempre, hindi mo i-prioritize yung project na least aligned with your current vision or mission. Because as we said, each project that is being implemented should bring the company closer to its goals. All right, so I hope that is clear with the multi-weighted scoring models. So let's go back to project classification. But this time, let's apply a selection model. So, as we know, a project is classified into 3. Compliance project, operational project, or strategic projects. And in classifying the project, you need to ask yourself if the project fits with the organization's strategy. So, how do you select among the many projects proposed? You use the model which we have just discussed. And as discussed, the weighted scoring criteria seem to be the best alternative. Now, here's just some of the reasons why. First, because they reduce the number of wasteful projects using the resources, because you already know these projects with low scores, you don't have to implement them because you already know that this would take and waste a lot of resources because it's not completely aligned with what you want to do with your company, but still you're implementing them. So it's such a waste of time and resources. Second, these weighted scoring models help you identify project goals that can be communicated using the selection criteria as corroboration. So you're able to quantify the importance and present the value of a specific project by showing this particular sheet on screen. Third, they help project managers understand how the project was selected, how it contributes to organization goals, and how it compares to other projects. So for short, it also eliminates bias. May iwasan natin yung thinking na, okay, kaya hindi pinili yung project ko because hindi ako gusto ng manager ko or dahil favorite niya si ganito. So, it actually helps project managers understand the thinking of the evaluators or the management who actually participated in the project screening process. All right. So, how do we actually solicit project proposals? So, in the business setting, a project proposal can come from anyone in the organization. And usually, you actually pitch these proposals during your meetings. Or if you are a third party contractor or vendor, you actually send your proposal to the company for review. And these proposals are reviewed and ranked. Therefore, they are screened and are being evaluated in terms of feasibility, potential contribution to strategic objectives, and fit within a portfolio of current projects. So meaning the project not just have to be feasible, implementable, and something that could bring financial benefits to the company. It should also be a fit within the company's current projects and its current mission. And in the ranking and selection of projects, the fate of a project lies in the selection criteria and the current portfolio of a project. Just like in Shark Tank, diba? When you watch the pitches in Shark Tank, sometimes these sharks or these investors would tell the entrepreneur that your business idea is not in my wheelhouse. I don't understand this product, or I don't think I can help you. So for that reason, I'm out. So that's the same thing when you select projects. So when you select projects, it should meet a given selection criteria. And at the end of it, the projects that meet the selection criteria will be prioritized by senior management. So this is how a project proposal form is supposed to look. So this project proposal form could be sent in by anyone and everyone in your company. Or if you don't have this project proposal form, you would have to write a project proposal in itself detailing the salient points of your idea for a project. So your project proposal form should be able to answer not just the details of this project, but should be able to give the management an idea of the project risk and other factors that they would need to understand. So here's the process of the screening. So from the proposal, the project team or the priority team evaluates the proposals and reviews portfolios for balance. So from here, the proposals could either be rejected, returned for more information, meaning revised. This is go, kill, recycle. If it's a go, then you pursue. If it's a kill, then definitely reject. If it's a revision or a source of inquiry, then it is recycle. So once a certain proposal is decided to be a go, then the project manager and staff are assigned to develop a detailed implementation plan. And then from the implementation plan, that will be submitted, this implementation plan will be reviewed alongside the proposal by the senior management or the project team. So from this, it's either reject or you accept, and then you return to the project manager and his staff for more information, and then required to be resubmitted later. Okay? So once a project is accepted after it is reviewed together with the implementation plan and the project proposal, dalawa ang pwedeng mangyari dyan. Number one, the project could be put on pause because of resources. So meaning, hindi siya priority. There is a much more urgent project that needs to be completed first bago yung project mo. So it is green-lit, but it is postponed. Or it's not postponed, but you're actually required to start pursuing and start planning that project. When a project charter is issued and resources are assigned, you are therefore ready to start your project. So this is the whole project screening process. So here is an evaluation sheet that is used for priority screening. This is priority screening analysis. So it's actually consisted of consists of two parts. The must objectives, meaning ito yung mga non-negotiables mo. And this is the criteria that is the minimum. Ito dapat yung minimum criteria na maaabot nung project mo. And secondly, the want objective. So, ito yung mga nice to haves. So, in the must objectives, you must answer yes, no, or no impact. Under the want objectives, meaning these are the nice to haves, you would have to rate these projects according to these nice to haves from 1 to 100. So you have to also see if this particular nice to have or additional benefit from this project addresses the certain problem, if it is an opportunity to fix a current problem, or this is an urgent problem that needs to be solved. And therefore, you get the total weighted score for each. And then, once you see kung sino yung may pinakamataas na weighted score, then it's the priority project out of the list. All right. So I hope this one is also clear. So when we manage multiple projects, these multiple projects develop and evolve into a portfolio system. And the portfolio has to have senior management input. So why is that the case? Because first, senior management input provides guidance in establishing selection criteria that strongly align with the current organization strategy. So it's a no-brainer. The senior manager serves as the compass. So they tell us and the members of our project team as to the selection criteria and how it aligns with the current goals of the organization. And in addition to that, the senior management actually decides how to balance the available organizational resources, meaning people, physical, and capital resources between the different types of projects, because they're the ones who are vetting the proposals. Therefore, they also have the power to allocate these resources and ensure that all ongoing projects receive the appropriate amount. All right, so that is why senior management input is very, very important. So when you have a portfolio system, there is also a team that manages and governs this portfolio system. In some offices or in some organizations, there's what we call a project management office. And the only thing that they do is to monitor all ongoing projects. And part of the responsibility of the project management office is to publish the priority of every project, ensure the selection process is open and free of power politics, meaning bawal po ang napupolitika. Third, evaluate the progress of current projects. So, the project management office can consist of your project evaluators and your project inspectors kung totoo bang ginagawa yung project, kung totoo ba siyang 90% complete, or there are fundamental problems in the execution of the projects. And fourth, the project management office and the governance team constantly scans the external environment to determine if the organization has to pivot in terms of its focus and selection criteria. So the management team serves as the lookout. If there are any changes to the external environment, they would have to tell the senior management, okay, there's something that happened. We may need to reassess our current plans and pivot from there based on this new information that we have. So in the project management office, you actually have to balance your project portfolio according to risk and the types of projects. So Jim and David Matheson studied research and development organizations and developed a classification scheme that could be used for assessing a project portfolio. They separated projects in terms of degrees of difficulty and commercial value. The four basic types of projects are: number one, the bread and butter projects. So when you say, okay, this is a bread and butter project, meaning this project involves improvements to current products and services. So kaya siya tinawag na bread and butter because you're focusing on the company's bread and butter and how to make it better. So you have to make incremental improvements to current products and services offered by the organization. All right? So ito yung bread and butter projects. The second type of project, according to David and Jim Matheson, are the pearls. The pearls represent revolutionary commercial advances using proven technology. Okay, so there are changes in the way that our consumers behave. And if our consumers actually change the way they buy or change the way they spend their money because of technology, and you are able to create a new product due to a technology that actually works, you have pearls in your hands. Kasi 'di ba, ang pearl matagal siyang mabuo. And once you have a pearl on your hand, it's something na precious. It's something revolutionary on your end. So, on the other hand, we have oysters. So, oysters involve technological breakthrough with tremendous potential. So, oyster, because oysters are expensive. And coincidentally, it's the oysters that breeds the pearls. So, an example of an oyster project is the iPhone, because the iPhone was the first phone that was touch screen. Pwede kang magpatugtog ng kanta, pwede kang mag-text, pwede kang tumawag, pwede kang kumuha ng picture, ng video, at maglaro. All in one phone without a keypad. So, Apple actually revolutionized the new breed of phones. So, because of this technological breakthrough, it also presented a tremendous potential in the smartphone industry. Kaya pwede mo siyang makonsider na oyster. Lastly, the white elephants. Diba when you hear the term, let's talk about the white elephant in the room. So, a white elephant is a rare elephant, and it's something that other people don't really like to talk about. So, when you look at the meaning of a white elephant, so it's something that is out of proportion, or it's something that is no longer viable. So when we say, let's talk about the white elephant in the room, we are talking about probably a major problem or a controversial issue that is present, but it's something that you don't really want to talk about because the topic is uncomfortable. So for projects, when a project is considered to be a white elephant, it used to be promising, pero hindi na siya practical and hindi na siya viable for the organization. So that's why these projects are called white elephant. So ito yung mga projects na ni-launch pero at the end of the day, hindi rin pala sila viable. So the company stopped producing the said products or pursuing the said projects. All right? So these are some of the key terms that we encounter during this chapter. And I would expect that you would be reading your books and going through Module 2. Now, for our next topic, we will be discussing Module 3 in our next class. So until then, I'll see you and Goodbye.